Right now, as you're watching this, two of the most powerful military forces on the planet are locked in a conflict that nobody fully understands. And I mean nobody. Not the analysts in Washington, not the generals in Tehran, and definitely not the politicians trying to explain it to you on cable news. Iran says it has total control over the Strait of Hormuz and is sinking oil tankers. The United States says it just obliterated Iran's entire naval fleet. 17 warships gone, nothing left floating. Both of those things cannot be true at the same time. So what's actually happening? Well, one of the sharpest foreign policy minds in the world just gave an interview that blows apart almost every assumption you've been fed about this war. And trust me, the answers are not what you're expecting, especially if you're watching this from Europe, because what's unfolding right now is about to hit your economy, your energy bills, and your security in ways that most European leaders aren't even willing to talk about publicly yet. Hit subscribe right now if you want the truth without the corporate filter. We cover what they won't every single day. Turn on notifications so you never miss when we expose the next major story. Do it now. Let's start with the choke point that keeps the global economy alive. The Strait of Hormuz, this narrow passage between Iran and the Arabian Peninsula, carries roughly 20% of the world's oil supply and a similar share of liquefied natural gas. When Iran's Revolutionary Guard announced it was imposing full sovereignty over those waters and threatened to sink any tanker attempting passage, that wasn't just military posturing. That was a direct shot at the jugular of the global energy market. Now, the U.S. Central Command came out almost immediately and said they'd destroyed Iran's naval capability entirely. 17 vessels gone, no fleet remaining. On paper, that sounds like a decisive win. But here's what nobody's asking. If Iran's navy is destroyed, why are oil prices still climbing? Why is the shipping industry in a state of panic? Because controlling a strait isn't just about ships. It's about mines. It's about shore-based missile batteries. It's about the credible threat that any vessel entering those waters might not come out. And for Europe, this isn't some abstract geopolitical chess game. This is your heating bill. This is your industrial output. This is the price you pay at the pump tomorrow morning. 4 days into this conflict, oil has already hit $84 a barrel. Gold is trading at $5,400, and we're just getting started. But the single most seismic event in this war so far isn't about ships or oil. It's about one man. Iran's supreme leader, Ali Khamenei, 86 years old, the man who ruled the Islamic Republic for 36 years, is dead. Now, everyone knew he was aging. Everyone knew his health was declining. That part wasn't a surprise. What was a surprise is how it happened. He wasn't taken by illness or old age. He was killed, targeted, eliminated while surrounded by his own commanders, with the entire Revolutionary Guard on high alert and preparing for war. Think about that for a second. The most protected man in Iran, inside the most fortified command structure the regime could build, and they still got to him. Both Israel and the United States had reportedly made his removal a stated war objective. Israel had even attempted to take him out months earlier, back in June. So his death wasn't just the end of a political era. It was designed to be the opening act of something much larger. And this is where things get genuinely fascinating, because what's happened since his death tells you more about how Iran actually works than anything you've read in the last 20 years. Before Khamenei was killed, he built something, a system, not just a government, but a layered, decentralized structure designed to survive exactly this scenario. According to analysis shared by Vali Nasser, an Iranian-American scholar and one of the most respected voices in Middle Eastern geopolitics, speaking with Foreign Policy's editor Rafi Agrawal, Khamenei had appointed 4 successors for every critical position: military, civilian, intelligence, 4 deep for each role. That's not a government. That's a survival architecture. And it was stress-tested repeatedly. After the killing of Ismail Haniyeh, after the assassination of Hassan Nasrallah, after the brutal 12-day war, each time the system adapted, decentralized further, and kept functioning. So right now, someone is running Iran. The Revolutionary Guard is still operating. Decisions are being made, missiles are being launched, and strategies are being executed. But here's the critical part. Nobody outside Iran knows who that person is. And that's not an accident. It's the entire point. Because Iran learned a devastating lesson from Hezbollah. When Nasrallah was killed and Hezbollah announced his successor, that successor immediately became Israel's next target. So Iran has made a calculated decision. Whoever is leading the country right now will remain invisible. Israel claims it killed 40 senior commanders in the opening hours of the war. They struck the joint command structure almost immediately. And yet Iran is still standing, still fighting, still launching. That tells you the system works. The deep state that Khamenei built, the network of senior bureaucrats, military commanders, Revolutionary Guard officers, and clerics, is functioning exactly as designed. And the fact that neither the US nor Israel can identify and target the real decision maker is arguably Iran's greatest strategic achievement in this entire conflict. Now here's where President Trump enters the picture with a move that sounds great on paper, but falls apart under any serious scrutiny. He called on the Iranian people to rise up, revolt, take to the streets, overthrow the regime from within, and he promised American support would be coming. So why hasn't it happened? Vali Nasser laid out 3 reasons, and each one is more damning than the last. First, you cannot ask an unarmed civilian population to launch a revolution while their country is being bombed. People are watching B-2 Spirit bombers drop GBU-57 bunker busters on Iranian soil. They're seeing explosions that level entire city blocks. In that environment, survival instinct overrides political anger every single time. Nobody is marching to the presidential palace when cruise missiles are landing 3 streets over. Second, the Revolutionary Guard and the besieged paramilitary forces are everywhere. Because the United States chose an air campaign rather than a ground invasion, Iran's ground-level security apparatus is completely intact. The Air Force may be degraded, the air defenses may be hit, but the hundreds of thousands of armed men patrolling every major city, they're untouched. Anyone who steps outside to protest is walking into a security force that has full operational capability and absolutely no hesitation about using it. And third, and this is the one nobody wants to admit, there is no opposition, not a real one. There's no organized political movement inside Iran capable of channeling public anger into sustained, directed action. And the exile leadership that some Western media keeps promoting, they have 0 ground game, 0 operational presence inside the country. The idea that the Shah's son could somehow direct a revolution from a television studio in Los Angeles while bombs are falling on Isfahan is, to put it bluntly, a fantasy. It makes for good cable news segments, but on the ground, in the middle of an active war, it is completely disconnected from reality. And this brings us to the most uncomfortable question of all. What exactly is Washington trying to achieve? Because right now, not even Washington seems to know. Vali Nasser made a point that should genuinely alarm anyone paying attention. The American president has given 3 completely different justifications for this war. First, His special envoy, Steve Witkoff, told the press that Iran was weeks away from acquiring a nuclear weapon and had to be stopped. Then, Trump himself told Congress that Iran possessed missiles capable of reaching the American homeland, and that constituted an unacceptable threat. And then, in a third statement, Trump said the strike was preemptive, that America hit Iran before Iran could hit America. 3 different reasons, 3 different legal and strategic frameworks, and none of them come with a clearly defined endgame. The primary objective was apparently killing Khamenei. That's done. But what comes after? What does victory look like? Who decides when the mission is accomplished? Nobody has answered that question. And that vacuum, that absence of a clear post-strike strategy, is where this war starts to become truly dangerous. Because without defined goals, wars don't end. They metastasize. And right now, Iran is metastasizing this war in a way that most Western analysts didn't anticipate. Here's what's actually happening with Iran's drone and missile campaign, and it's far more sophisticated than it looks on the surface. Those drones hitting residential towers in the Gulf, the ones that missed the U.S. consulate in Dubai, the ones that seem inaccurate and almost random, that's not incompetence. That's phase 1 of a deliberate strategy. Iran's primary objective right now is not destruction, it's exhaustion. Specifically, the exhaustion of enemy air defense stockpiles. Every drone Iran launches forces a response. And in the Gulf states, that response comes in the form of Patriot missiles, some of the most expensive interceptors ever built. Each one costs millions of dollars. Each one is finite. Each one that gets used against a cheap drone is one fewer available for the precision ballistic missiles that are coming in phase 2. Iran is doing to the Gulf and Israel exactly what the U.S. and Israel did to Iran, degrading air defenses. Only Iran's approach is slower, cheaper, and designed to bleed the enemy dry before the real strike packages arrive. And here's the part that should send chills down every European energy minister's spine. Iran knows that the whole world can see this strategy. They're not hiding it. And that visibility is itself a form of pressure. Because every Gulf state watching its Patriot stockpile shrink knows exactly what comes next. The question isn't whether Iran will launch precision strikes at high-value targets. The question is when, and what will be left to stop them. But Iran isn't fighting alone, and this is where the conflict threatens to spiral beyond anyone's control. Hezbollah has re-entered the fight, launching strikes at Israel from Lebanon. Iraqi Shia militias are hitting targets in Saudi Arabia, something the Saudis have now publicly confirmed. But the most dangerous piece on this board hasn't moved yet: the Houthis. According to Nasser's analysis, the Houthis are the strongest militia in Iran's network right now, and they haven't entered this war. They haven't closed the Bab el-Mandeb Strait. They're sitting on their full capability, untouched and unspent, and that should terrify everyone. Because unlike Hezbollah, which has been degraded by months of Israeli intelligence operations and targeted strikes, the Houthis have their entire arsenal intact. They spent the 12-day war learning exactly how to strike Israeli targets, developing targeting data, and refining their methods. They are more experienced and better equipped than at any point in their history. And they're waiting. The analysis suggests they're waiting for the Gulf states to formally enter the war, and then they'll strike. Hezbollah's role is to stretch Israeli air defenses across multiple fronts, forcing Israel to defend from both the north and the east simultaneously. But the Houthis, their role isn't distraction. Their role is devastation. High-value targets, strategic infrastructure, the kind of strikes that change the trajectory of a war. Now here's the finding from NASA's analysis that genuinely caught me off guard, and I think it'll surprise you too. When asked who the weakest party in this three-way conflict is, the United States, Israel, or Iran, the answer wasn't Iran, it was America. And the reasoning is devastatingly logical. Iran has nothing left to lose. Their supreme leader is dead. This has become a religious war, a jihad, not a political calculation. They'll fight to the last man in the Revolutionary Guard because retreat isn't an option when you've framed the conflict in existential spiritual terms. The Iranian regime never negotiated based on its people's welfare anyway. It negotiated to preserve its own survival. Now that survival itself is at stake, there's no off-ramp they'll accept. Israel won't stop either. Netanyahu needs regime collapse in Tehran to justify the costs his country is absorbing. Israeli cities are being hit by missiles daily, and without a decisive, visible victory, the political fallout at home would be catastrophic. Israel also knows it probably won't get another chance to strike Iran at this scale with full American backing. So it's pushing for maximum damage regardless of what Washington wants. America, though? America has something neither Iran nor Israel has: a democratic system that can pull the plug. Congress can vote on this war. The Democratic Party is already pushing back. And even within the Republican Party, if American casualties mount, if energy prices keep climbing, if the economic damage becomes undeniable, Republican members of Congress could break ranks. A single vote in the House could effectively end American involvement. Trump's own Speaker of the House has reportedly said that if Republicans lose their majority in the midterms, Trump's presidency is functionally over. And this war, with its rising costs, unclear objectives, and expanding scope, is exactly the kind of thing that could hand the Democrats that majority. The irony is staggering. The most powerful military on earth is constrained not by its enemy's strength, but by its own political system. And for Europe, this is where the picture gets truly dark. The Gulf states are trapped in what Nasser calls an impossible dilemma. If they support the American campaign and Iran's regime falls, they haven't won peace. They've inherited a generational religious conflict with a 100 million person nation that will view the Arab Gulf states, not America, as the ones who destroyed their system. That's not a geopolitical rivalry. That's a civilizational vendetta. And if the Gulf states try to stay neutral, they're getting hit anyway, by Iranian missiles, by Iraqi militias, by potential Houthi strikes. There is no safe position. Oman's foreign minister apparently understood this better than anyone. Reports indicate he was practically begging Washington not to abandon negotiations, warning that the consequences of war would far exceed anything the White House had modeled. He could see what Trump apparently couldn't, or chose to ignore. And why did Trump rush in? Nasser identifies three factors. The prize was irresistible. Killing the supreme leader is something no American president has ever accomplished. Israeli pressure was relentless. Netanyahu pushed hard and repeatedly for the strike. And Trump believed, perhaps naively, that decapitating the regime would be his ticket to midterm election victory. A clean, dramatic win that would lock in Republican control of Congress. That bet is not paying off. So where does this leave us? Trump himself has suggested a 5-week timeline for this operation. 5 weeks. But look at what 4 days have produced. Oil at $84, gold at $5,400, the Strait of Hormuz functionally contested, oil tankers sinking, NATO members quietly discussing involvement, Gulf infrastructure under attack from 3 different directions, Iranian missiles still launching despite everything that's been thrown at them, and no one, not Washington, not Tel Aviv, not Tehran, showing any willingness to stop. 5 weeks of this? That's not a military operation. That's a global economic earthquake, with the epicenter sitting right on top of the world's most critical energy corridor. For Europeans watching this, the question isn't whether this war affects you. It already does. Every barrel of oil that doesn't flow through Hormuz drives up prices across the continent. Every escalation pulls NATO closer to a conversation nobody in Brussels wants to have. Every day this continues without clear objectives or an exit strategy, the risk of this spiraling into something genuinely unprecedented grows. This is not a regional skirmish. This is the war that every American administration for the last 4 decades tried desperately to avoid. And now it's here, being fought without a plan, without clear goals, and without an ending anyone can see. The only thing that's certain right now is that nothing about this is going to be resolved quickly. And the longer it burns, the more the entire world pays the price.